Inside the endoscopy room at TP Hospital, the doctor looked at Dee with concern, wondering whether the procedure could even be completed with such an uncooperative patient.
Why are you struggling so much? When you're sick, you have to endure it. There's no other way.
As he spoke, the doctor held a long flexible tube about the thickness of a little finger and gently guided it through Dee's narrow throat, gradually advancing it down into her stomach. He worked diligently, pushing the scope deeper, then pulling it back, moving it back and forth to examine her digestive tract. Dee reacted violently because the discomfort was almost unbearable. She could hardly describe the sensation. Every instinct told her to run out of the examination room immediately, but she couldn't. Dee lay on her left side with her head tilted back, her left leg stretched out and her right leg bent over it. Wherever the scope advanced, she gagged uncontrollably. The pain seemed to penetrate to the very marrow of her bones. Saliva flowed continuously into the tray placed beneath her mouth. In the midst of this terrifying experience, as she struggled helplessly, Dee suddenly realized that the way the doctor was inserting the tube into her body looked exactly like the way she used to handle the metal skewers, thrusting them repeatedly through live gobies in the kitchen of the restaurant where she had once worked. Dee was a young woman living in a small rented room in bustling HCM City. Her apartment was conveniently located near TP Hospital, so she decided to have her condition examined there. For the past 3 or 4 days, she had suffered from persistent abdominal pain and severe indigestion, leaving her miserable and unable to focus on anything. Whether she had eaten or not, her abdomen remained unusually swollen. On December 17, 2020, Dee came to the hospital for her scheduled endoscopy. As she felt the tube being threaded through her body from top to bottom, she finally understood the agony of the tiny gobies she had skewered alive every day while working as a kitchen assistant at Panda Barbecue on HB Street. At that moment, fear overwhelmed her as memories of her past actions flooded back. Although she had only been working for wages, those horrifying moments in the examination room made her realize how thoughtless and cruel she had once been. For the sake of a modest paycheck, she had willingly taken part in the brutal killing of countless living creatures. A small cut on our finger that draws a little blood is enough to make us wince in pain. Yet those gobies, healthy and full of life, were subjected to unspeakable torment while still alive, an ordeal resembling torture itself. Dee was not the only one responsible. Every kitchen employee at that restaurant killed the fish in an extraordinarily cruel manner. Every morning without fail, Dee and her co-workers received bags packed with wriggling gobies, crammed tightly together in a confined space. The lively fish were emptied into plastic bags. Lemon juice was squeezed over them, followed by handfuls of salt. The bags were then tied tightly and rubbed vigorously to remove the slime from their bodies, making them easier to skewer later. The weapon Dee used was a sharp metal skewer. Holding a fish in her left hand, she used her thumb and index finger to pry open its mouth. With her right hand, she drove the skewer in through the mouth, forcing it all the way down the body until the sharp tip emerged from the end of the tail. The stronger fish struggled fiercely. Even after being painfully rubbed together inside the bags, their tails continued to thrash wildly, flipping from side to side in desperate attempts to escape the hands of their executioners. It was rarely possible to skewer them cleanly in one motion. Dee often had to ease the skewer in, pull it back slightly to gain leverage, and then thrust it forward more forcefully, carefully keeping it straight so it wouldn't pierce sideways through the flesh. New employees usually found the work difficult, but Dee had become experienced. Her hands moved with practiced speed and efficiency. Even after the skewer had pierced their bodies from end to end, the fish continued convulsing violently before their movements gradually weakened and finally ceased. Their lives ended there, in a pain that words could never fully describe. While doing this work, Dee thought of it as nothing more than another task she had to complete. She never once stopped to consider the suffering of those helpless fish, until the day the doctor inserted the endoscope through her own mouth and into her stomach. More than half a year earlier, Dee had encountered the Buddha's teachings. She began studying karma and cause and effect, and came to believe that the suffering she experienced that day was an immediate karmic consequence of the harmful actions she herself had committed. She also realized that this was only a mild warning, and that the greater karmic consequences of taking life had not yet ripened. The thought of being reborn as a fish in future lives, only to be slaughtered by others, or of enduring unbearable suffering in the hell realms, filled her with terror. She trembled and broke into a cold sweat. From that day forward, Dee awakened to her mistakes. She resolved to take refuge in the Buddha's teachings, abandon harmful actions, and devote herself to cultivating virtue and wholesome deeds. Dee's story has prompted many people to reflect on their own occupations. Like countless others, she simply wanted stable employment so she could earn a living and provide a peaceful, comfortable life for herself and her family. There was nothing wrong with that aspiration. Her mistake was choosing the wrong profession. One cannot build personal happiness by causing suffering to other living beings, whether human or animal. A livelihood founded upon harmful actions cannot truly bring peace or security. Instead, it may lead to consequences far more serious than one can imagine. In the Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha taught that certain livelihoods should be avoided because they are incompatible with compassion. These include hunting, commercial fishing, trading in raw meat, selling cooked meat, producing or selling alcohol, and trafficking in human beings. Such occupations inflict harm upon living beings, and the Buddha warned people to avoid them for their own benefit. Even if these professions seem to offer financial gain in the short term, one should not become attached to them. When the consequences of one's actions eventually ripen, regret may come too late.